Why did Hollywood truly fear Gene Kelly?
The contradiction.
Welcome back. In 1952, audiences around the world watched Gene Kelly dance through puddles with an umbrella, his face radiating pure joy. That single scene in Singin' in the Rain became the defining image of post-war American optimism. But what the camera didn't capture was the reality behind that sequence. The fever, the exhaustion, the collapsed performers, the young actress who would later compare the experience to childbirth itself. Gene Kelly revolutionized American dance. Before him, male dancers faced ridicule and suspicion. Kelly transformed that perception entirely, proving that dance could be athletic, masculine, and thoroughly American. He brought working-class authenticity to an art form previously associated with European refinement. Yet the same drive that created cinematic magic also left behind exhausted, sometimes traumatized collaborators. Some of Hollywood's toughest professionals described working with Kelly as among the most grueling experiences of their careers. How did the man who embodied joy on screen create such demanding conditions off-screen? What was the real cost of the perfection we see preserved on film? To answer that, we need to understand Gene Kelly, the man. We need to trace his journey from Depression-era Pittsburgh to absolute Hollywood power. We need to examine the wounds that never healed and the philosophy that justified methods many found excessive. This isn't a story about a villain. It's something more complicated. It's about how exceptional talent, traumatic circumstances, and complete creative control can create both masterpieces and misery, sometimes simultaneously.
For me and my gal.
The rise to power. Before Gene Kelly arrived in Hollywood, movie musicals existed in two separate traditions. Busby Berkeley created grand spectacles with hundreds of dancers forming geometric patterns shot from above. These were visually stunning, but impersonal. Individual dancers became components in a larger visual machine. Then there was Fred Astaire, who represented elegance personified. Top hat, white tie, aristocratic grace. Astaire's style emphasized sophistication and what appeared to be effortless technique. Everything about his persona suggested wealth, leisure, and European-influenced high culture. Gene Kelly rejected both templates. Eugene Curran Kelly arrived in New York City in 1938 with specific ambitions. He didn't just want to dance, he wanted to choreograph. He wanted creative control. His Broadway breakthrough came with Leave It to Me, a Cole Porter musical. His talent was immediately obvious, but more importantly, he had confidence. He wasn't intimidated by established stars or powerful producers. In 1940, Kelly landed the lead in Pal Joey, playing a morally ambiguous nightclub performer. His performance caught Hollywood's attention. Producer David O. Selznick offered him a contract without requiring a screen test. That detail matters. It shows that even before arriving in Hollywood, Kelly was considered exceptional. His first major film was For Me and My Gal in 1942, opposite Judy Garland. MGM executives immediately recognized something different. Kelly moved like an athlete, not a classical dancer. Where Astaire seemed to float, Kelly appeared to claim the ground. He didn't glide, he strode. But 1944's CoverGirl proved Kelly's true ambitions. Loaned to Columbia Pictures, Kelly fought the studio for creative control over choreography. When executives resisted, he threatened to walk. They backed down. This pattern would repeat throughout his career. Kelly demanding, studios yielding, because no one else could deliver what he promised. CoverGirl featured the revolutionary alter ego sequence, where Kelly danced with his own reflection in an apparent argument conducted entirely through movement. This wasn't just technical wizardry. Kelly proved that dance could tell psychological stories, could reveal internal conflict, could serve as character development rather than mere entertainment. The technical challenges were immense. This was 1944. No computer imagery existed. To create the illusion, Kelly had to perform the routine multiple times with exact precision, trusting that technicians could combine the footage convincingly. One mistimed step would collapse the entire illusion. Then came Anchors Away in 1945, featuring Kelly dancing with Jerry the Mouse. Once again, extraordinary technical demands. Kelly choreographed every movement to match animation that didn't exist yet. He was dancing with empty air, trusting that animators working months later could follow his lead. In 1948, The Pirate featured Kelly's first fully realized ballet sequence on film. The extended dance number was experimental, artistically ambitious, and beyond what most studios considered commercially viable. The Pirate failed at the box office, but Kelly had proven he was willing to risk commercial failure for artistic innovation. Then came On the Town in 1949, which Kelly co-directed with Stanley Donen. Kelly fought MGM to shoot on location in New York City, something unprecedented for musicals. The studio insisted it was financially impossible. Kelly persisted. He believed authentic New York locations were essential to the film's energy. He won, and the location shooting gave On the Town a vibrancy studio sets couldn't match. By 1951, An American in Paris represented the culmination of Kelly's artistic vision. The film concluded with a 17-minute ballet sequence that Kelly choreographed, conceptualized, and starred in. No dialogue, no traditional narrative structure, just dance and music, exploring emotional journey. Studio executives worried it would bore audiences. They were catastrophically wrong. An American in Paris won 6 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. Here's what made Kelly genuinely powerful. He didn't just perform. He required complete creative control. As star, choreographer, and increasingly as director, Kelly held absolute authority over everyone in his productions. He could fire dancers. He could demand endless rehearsal time. He could reject costumes, sets, even musical arrangements. And because he consistently delivered both critical acclaim and commercial success, studios gave him that control. They had to. Fred Astaire had retired from musicals. Busby Berkeley's spectacles had fallen out of fashion. Gene Kelly was MGM's most valuable musical asset. Power reveals character. And Gene Kelly's character, forged in very different circumstances, was about to be tested.
Ideas my father cultivated was that he was an ordinary guy, working class, middle class.
The origin wound. Eugene Curran Kelly was born August 23, 1912, in Pittsburgh's North Side, a working-class Irish Catholic neighborhood where toughness was expected and softness wasn't tolerated. His father made a modest living as a phonograph salesman. The family wasn't destitute, but they certainly weren't comfortable. Gene's mother, Harriet, harbored artistic ambitions that poverty had crushed in her own life. When Gene was 8, Harriet enrolled him and his brother in dance lessons. She knew exactly what would happen. The neighborhood boys immediately targeted them. Sissy. In working-class Pittsburgh in 1920, dance was considered feminine, possibly shameful for boys. Gene and Fred faced constant harassment that sometimes escalated to physical confrontation. Gene Kelly learned to fight. Not because he enjoyed violence, but because survival demanded it. This wasn't character-building adversity. This was genuine trauma. A young boy forced to choose between his mother's dreams and his own safety, between artistic expression and social acceptance. By 15, Gene had become skilled enough at hockey, baseball, and football to silence most critics. He played hockey semi-professionally. The athletic training influenced his dance style profoundly. He later credited hockey for his low-to-the-ground, wide-open movement vocabulary. But the early shame never disappeared. That experience of being mocked for something his mother forced him into created a wound that never fully healed. It generated a need to prove that dance could be masculine, athletic, powerful. More than that, it created a need to prove he was tough enough that no one would ever again mistake him for soft. Then came October 1929. The stock market crash devastated the Kelly family. Gene had to transfer from Penn State back to Pittsburgh to save money. His journalism dreams evaporated overnight. The next 5 years were defined by survival. Gene took whatever work he could find. He dug ditches. He pumped gas. He worked as a carpenter's assistant. These weren't summer jobs. This was desperate manual labor undertaken to keep the family's studio open and fund his own education at the University of Pittsburgh. Every night he taught dance classes. He'd visit nightclubs, watch movie musicals, attend vaudeville shows, learning routines to teach his students. He was simultaneously a full-time student, a manual laborer, and a dance instructor. One former student later recalled, "Gene treated every routine like military training. He'd demonstrate a step maybe twice, then expect you to match it. If you couldn't keep up, he'd simply move on to someone who could." Even at 19, he had zero patience for excuses. By the time Kelly reached Hollywood in 1941, he'd spent 15 years proving himself, proving he wasn't soft, proving he could survive brutal physical labor, proving that dance was legitimate work requiring legitimate skill. He knew exactly how much punishment the human body could endure because he'd endured it himself. He knew that exhaustion could be pushed through because he'd pushed through it while digging ditches during the day and teaching at night. He knew that complaints about difficulty were merely excuses because he'd been too poor to afford excuses. And he expected everyone else to meet that same standard. There's a psychological term for this: projection. When someone has overcome tremendous hardship through sheer determination and refusal to acknowledge their own suffering, they often expect others to show identical resilience. They sometimes view any expression of difficulty as weakness. Gene Kelly didn't become demanding despite his difficult background. He became demanding because of it. The experiences that made him resilient also made him sometimes unable to recognize that his standards might be unreasonable for others in different circumstances. The terror revealed. In 1951, MGM began production on Singin' in the Rain, the film that would become Gene Kelly's masterpiece and his most controversial production. The project brought together Kelly as star and co-director, Stanley Donen as co-director, Donald O'Connor as comic relief, and 19-year-old Debbie Reynolds as female lead. Donald O'Connor arrived with impressive credentials. He'd been performing since childhood, had starred in numerous films, was an accomplished dancer, comedian, and actor. By any reasonable standard, O'Connor was a seasoned professional who shouldn't have been intimidated. Yet years later, O'Connor admitted, "Those first few weeks on Singin' in the Rain, I was genuinely terrified. Gene would run a number 15, sometimes 20 times until every angle satisfied him. I wasn't afraid of working hard. I was afraid of making a mistake. Not because Gene would fire me. I was afraid of how he'd react." What did that reaction look like? According to multiple witnesses, Kelly wouldn't yell. He wouldn't criticize directly. He would simply stop the music, maintain absolute silence for several seconds, then say calmly, "Again, from the top." That silence was worse than any criticism. It created an atmosphere where performers felt they'd failed without understanding exactly how or why. They couldn't defend themselves because Kelly hadn't actually criticized them. He'd simply rejected their work and demanded repetition. For the Make 'em Laugh number, Kelly asked O'Connor to perform a move from his vaudeville days, running full speed at a wall and executing a backward somersault. There was one problem. O'Connor was smoking 4 packs of cigarettes daily at that point. His cardiovascular system wasn't prepared for that explosive physical effort. O'Connor agreed anyway. He knew refusing would damage his relationship with Kelly and potentially jeopardize his role. After 3 days of filming, O'Connor collapsed. Not from injury, but from accumulated exhaustion.